So good afternoon again. Welcome to the webinar, Haiti, Pairing Sanctions and Other International Responses. I'm Ana Paula Oliveira, Senior Analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, and I'll be your moderator for the session today. This webinar is the third in a series that presents some of the preliminary findings of a research initiative launched by the Global Initiative in 2021 on sanctions and organized crime. This research looks at the use of sanctions to counter organized crime, drawing together on a number of our organized crime observatories and thematic programs. This includes a recently launched civil society observatory for Haiti, which builds on longer and standing GI's research in the country. The observatory will be issuing regular reports on the crisis in Haiti going forward. Assessing sanctions trends and impact will be a key part of this observatory. Today, then, we will discuss the use of sanctions and opportunities for leverage sanctions strategically in Haiti. This session is structured in a Q&A format, so please join us in the conversation by dropping your questions in a Q&A function that you can see in the bottom of the screen. Please use this Q&A function as you won't be able to use the chat. The webinar is also being recorded and live streamed, so you can access the recording and Global Initiative's website. Before we dive into the conversation today, I'll turn over to my colleagues Roman and Matt so they can introduce themselves. Roman.
Good morning, Anna. Thanks so much. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Roman Lecourt. I'm a senior expert at the Global Initiative, and I coordinate our Haiti Observatory.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Herbert. I'm the head of research for North Africa and the Sahel at the Global Initiative. I also co-lead the Global Initiative's focused research initiative on the use of targeted sanctions to address organized crime. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So my first question is actually to Roman. I would like to start with you. Can you lay out the current dynamics on the ground in Haiti? I understand a multinational mission is in the cusp of deploying. So what is the situation they will face?
Thank you, Anna. As you said, there is still the deployment mission to be launched. The multilateral security mission, the MSS, coordinated by Kenya. In the meantime, Haiti and especially Port-au-Prince have been experiencing a very stark crisis since the coordinated attacks launched by the gangs on February 29th. The security crisis, in a way, is by no means resolved. However, the current situation seems to mark a kind of return to the pre-February 29 revolution, although the MSS has not arrived, nor have the gangs actually taken full control of the capital. The precarious and unstable order of Port-au-Prince has partially returned, according to the people on the ground, and a sense of normal life in parts of the city is slowly recovering. Although you have a very deep and dire humanitarian crisis that has not been resolved either. So I think right now what we have is a situation in which violence is still very high, and while the MSS has yet to arrive, the gangs have been conducting attacks on multiple locations. No one is really able to assess their reaction and full reaction to the coming of the MSS, but it seems like they have been preparing for the deployment of the international mission.
Thanks a lot, Roman. And if you could explore a little bit more on what policy responses, both of you, Roman and Matt, what policy responses that are being used to Haiti to date?
Sure, I would focus here on the institutional rebuilding of Haiti and institutional life after the resigning of the prime minister in March. Transitional presidential council that has been appointed to lead the transition seems to have found a semblance of stability, threatened by the appointment a couple of days ago, a week ago, of a new prime minister. The installation of the prime minister and the forthcoming new government that's yet to be enacted and formed mark a fragile institutional return to normal life, admittedly, but essential to the resolution of the crisis and the return to the rule of law in Haiti, and especially in the capital, in Port-au-Prince. I would say that against this backdrop, however, action by the international community has been marked by the constant postponement of the MSS deployment, and the impression that is conveyed right now is of a total lack of coordination and communication between the main actors involved for the deployment and the MSS. A quite significant level of opacity, a lack of transparency in the communication, and the lack of coordination again within the international community.
So perhaps I'll pick up here on the second major line of international action within Haiti. So Romain referred to the MSS. I think the other one that we can look at is the use of targeted financial and visa sanctions, which is obviously also kind of a key focus of this webinar. And what we've seen is that over the last 2 years, sanctions have really emerged as the most visible international response to the evolving gang crisis within Haiti. And really, there are two strands of this, or two strands that we can think of. First are the sanctions that are issued by the UN Security Council. They have issued a number of designations. We're up to 5 so far. And they've also crucially created a panel of experts for Haiti, which is essentially an investigative arm that is looking into a host of different issues as laid out in the resolutions, establishing both the sanctions regime and the panel of experts, and reporting back to the sanctions committee for Haiti at the UN. This is developing, in addition to the 5 designations already put forward, a number of other options for the UN. And what we've seen in other contexts is that these panels of experts are oftentimes very crucial, not just for the sanctions committee and not just for the identification of future designees, but also for the tracking of how it is that essentially the designations themselves are impacting the situation on the ground. Now, the other major strand of action around sanctions is unilateral sanctions. Here, what we've seen is that the UN sanctions have really been complemented by the actions of the United States, Canada, the Dominican Republic, all of whom have issued a number of different designations on really a wide variety of different actors within Haiti, either targeted financial sanctions or, in many cases, especially by the Dominican Republic, the banning or effective banning of the travel into that country's territory by a select number of actors within Haiti. I think it's also important to underscore that we haven't seen all actors that are interested in the crisis and focused on the crisis use sanctions, even those that have a history of using sanctions in other peace and conflict contexts. I think it's notable to date that while the EU has established their own framework for a Haiti sanctions regime, they've essentially gold-plated the UN regime. They have not yet sanctioned any actors or individuals outside of it. But I think this is something that we're going to be watching closely in the coming months and coming year to see whether they actually get on a similar bandwagon with the US, with Canada, with the Dominican Republic, and with other interested international stakeholders.
Thanks a lot, Matt, for bringing this second layer as part of the toolkit in response to Haiti. I was just wondering whether these two approaches have been coordinated, how you see that. Maybe Romain could answer to that question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think even though the sanctions regime emerged in 2022 at roughly the same time the discussion on the MSS gained ground, there is no specific language in the resolution, in the UN resolution 2699, dictating how the two strands of international effort in Haiti will actually intersect, how they can reinforce one another, and what type of operational and political challenges will and might arise on the ground. There's a crucial need, again, to reinforce coordination. I would say to reinforce communication as well, transparency, and a sense of reconnecting what is happening at the international community level with what Haitian society, Haitian stakeholders, Haitian authorities are actually expecting from these actions, given the shared peace and security objectives of both the sanctions regime and the mission, and the explicit focus of both on countering gangs and other political and criminal actors driving the current unrest. That communication and that coordination is absolutely fundamental. And I think the other important issue that has come up in our analysis, and I would say this is kind of the core research argument that we're trying to bring to the table, is that although the gangs' financial autonomy has increased over the past years through arms trafficking, drug trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, and protection rackets, this does not free them from political allegiances and negotiations and relations to political and economic patrons. I think far from behaving like insurgents, Haitian criminal groups are way more interested in integrating or navigating the system than in overthrowing it. Indeed, the gang's activities are not parasitic to a large extent. Through violence, they have been able to position themselves in control of crucial commercial activities and extract profits from, again, extortion, protection racket that make them particularly powerful. I think in this context, the core message is that international sanctions, which have not really been mentioned in recent international debates, could and should play a crucial role in destabilizing the links between the political and criminal worlds in Haiti. I think that's the core of the message on the relationship between the sanctions, the judicial response to violence and political criminal links, and the public security strategy that are trying to be implemented.
Yeah, I broadly agree with Romain on this. I'd also note that I think that there's potentially a much closer synergy between the MSS mission and the Sanctions Committee, the panel of experts, than in previous UN missions. Like Romain said, the MSS, the Sanctions Committee, these are explicitly focused on supporting and assisting Haiti's police in addressing the harms and challenges generated by gangs. So there's kind of a unity of effort there that's vitally important here. If you think of the MSS, you can think about it as effectively a bottom-up policing mission. It's focused on limiting criminal activities such as economic predation, kidnapping, drug trafficking, which fuel gangs' power. What you have with the sanctions strand, both UN sanctions and even more so unilateral sanctions, is essentially top-down pressure put on financial enablers, put on, in the case of unilateral sanctions, on some of the elites that have been intimately interlinked into this entire effort. And so there's actually the potential for a greater synergy than we've seen in the past. But also this means that a strategic, well-thought-through approach is particularly important. I say this because the UN has a very poor history of coordinating sanctions regimes and linked panel of experts with peace support missions. And if you look at contexts in Africa, for example, the peace mission, the sanctions regime in Mali, the peacekeeping mission in CAR, the peacekeeping mission in the DRC, and the various panels of experts and sanctions committees there, I mean, they've operated in the same space, but have they operated in a unity of effort? Generally speaking, no. I think that there's been a gap of strategic or exploitation of strategic opportunities around the fact that both of these forces are essentially doing different things in the same space, but nominally could be doing more. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in Haiti to take a hard look at what options exist for pairing these two tools in a more comprehensive fashion.
So I guess my question builds on that, Matt. So what are the opportunities for building the synergies into these two approaches? If you could both answer to that question. And I just wanted to remind the audience that join the session a little bit later, that you can drop your question and join us in this conversation by using the Q&A function. So Romain, maybe over to you.
Thank you, Anna. Again, I will build on the argument of better coordination, better strategy, and better objectives that are and should be tied to a stronger and clearer communication. The first and arguably most important task involves preliminary meetings intended to establish a shared understanding of mandates, operational approaches, and current objectives for each side. This should then lead to the development of a joint plan on how the respective actors can actually work together. In part, this is a technical issue, identifying, for example, at which level MSS officials will interact with UN panel members, for example, or other UN actors and Haitian authorities, and how information developed by these bodies can be shared. However, such planning should also detail a strategic vision of what international actors are trying to achieve via designations and the MSS mission and over what timeline. There's arguably a need for radical practicality here. The focus should be on near-term objectives, and nuanced efforts, such as disrupting the ability of gang leaders to cause harms, increasing the friction costs of criminal activities, and deterring those facilitating or funding gang operations in Haiti and from abroad, in so doing, impeding and weakening gangs' powers and that of their backers and brokers. Further, an explicit focus by the MSS mission and sanctions regime should be placed on pressuring and reshaping Haiti's criminal ecosystem in order to systematically limit the power of gangs on the ground. An example is weapons trafficking. Firearms trafficking has been much more on the table over the past days and weeks. An ecosystem shaping approach should start with an emphasis on border security, both along the land border with the DR, the Dominican Republic, and its Haiti's territorial waters, but also an effort in the US in order to impede the entry of weapons and other guns to Haiti. It will include heightened security on ports and the use of sanctions tools and prosecutions to address actors inside and outside of Haiti. And here I stress the fact that we need to do much more on actors being currently supporting firearms trafficking from outside of Haiti and bringing firearms into the country, especially military-grade firearms, as we see now. Those would be my main points on the issue.
Yeah, I mean, again, here I agree wholeheartedly with Romain. What I'd add on to that, though, is that there's a need to also continuously map the criminal ecosystem. There basically should be the expectation that as all these tools come into play, as the MSS gets on the ground, as the sanctions regimes, either by the UN or by nation states, become more focused in the issuance of designations, as prosecutions come into play in other areas across the Caribbean and in countries that are linked via criminal ecosystems to Haiti, we should expect that the criminal ecosystem within Haiti is going to shift. It is going to be shaped by these pressures. So put simply, we can't expect that our current understanding of the state of play amongst the gangs, the political economy of them, the political economy of firearms trafficking to the country is going to stay static. There needs to be strategic anticipation, foresight, essentially. And what this requires is real on-the-ground monitoring. The panel of experts, like I said, has really done an excellent job doing initial mapping work on criminal ecosystems in Haiti, both via their end-of-year report last year, as well as the interim report that was issued earlier this year. I'd very much recommend both to those who haven't read them and are interested in what the situation on the ground is. But it's also crucial to note that once the MSS gets on the ground, once that force is deployed and is working closely with the Haitian National Police, they're in turn going to gather investigative leads and evidence on the nature of local criminal ecosystems. I think the key is going to be to figure out how to mesh these two kind of macro level focus by the panel of experts with the micro level focus by the MSS into a cohesive whole, and make sure that it's as understandable and nimble as possible to be able to really fully exploit it, to understand the changing picture of crime on the ground. I should say, too, that it's going to be vitally important to share this information as much as possible. both with nation states, within the multilateral community, so amongst different aspects of UN and UN authorized forces that are on the ground in Haiti and in the neighboring region, but also crucially for civil society and for media. If you look at what the gangs are doing in Haiti right now, there's a very savvy public relations campaign that's underway. They're attempting to dominate the information space. And I think in looking to map what the criminal ecosystem looks like, to the greatest degree possible, this needs to be publicly shareable. And so I think there's a real opportunity here for civil society, both for what Romain and the Haiti Observatory are doing for the Global Initiative, but also other civil society actors in Haiti and outside, such as International Crisis Group and others that are really doing excellent work tracing the evolution of the situation on the ground. I guess the final point that I'd make is there needs to be a focus on expediting sanctions designations, prioritizing targeting, especially in areas where the MSS is going to be deployed. So again, this gets into syncing the unity of effort between the two strands of international support. And this really needs to be in a concentrated manner, focused specifically on disrupting the ecosystem of organized crime and the enablers of organized crime. And this joined effort, this concentrated sanctions focused on areas where the MSS is going to be deployed, needs to continue after it gets on the ground. The mission, in conjunction with the Haitian National Police, should really focus its efforts on targeting sanctioned gangs operations on the ground, via targeted operations and arrests, as well as constraining their ability to operate through patrolling and maintaining a presence in key areas, even as sanctions continue to address some of the key enablers, be it weapons traffickers or elites that are helping to fund the gangs, that are making it possible for the gangs to continue to strategically continue their operations.
Thanks a lot, Matt. I think both of you, we covered a lot of ground on how the sanctions regime interplay with the MSS and how sanctions would be used specifically on the Haiti context. I was wondering if I could switch gears and pick up a point on what you said, Matt, was actually you have the UN sanctions regime and you also have sanctions issued by member states. So I was wondering how these two interplay and what are the synergies between the two?
Yeah, so I think they interplay to a degree. So if you look at especially US and Canadian sanctions, to date they've been a lot more dynamic than the UN ones, with designations occurring a lot more regularly. The numbers are vastly different between the US and Canada and the UN system. I think also notably what you've seen is that the US and Canada, they've been willing to designate a lot of politically powerful individuals, including politicians and businessmen. And like Romain flagged earlier, these are individuals that oftentimes play a very key, though behind the scenes role in gang operations and gang activity. Essentially, they sponsor them and they instrumentalize the use of gangs in many cases. And today, you look at what the UN has done, and it's sanctioned 5 gang leaders. So they've almost completely avoided this issue. And I mean, in terms of sanctioning, they have completely avoided it. They called out some individuals within panel of experts reports, but in terms of direct designations, they haven't done anything. Now, this aversion by the UN to focusing on elites, I think it's likely due to concerns that designations on elites could negatively impact peace building and government formation going forward. But obviously, this comes at the risk of allowing that elite gang nexus that I just referred to continue to operate unhindered. I would say too, it's important to note, you talked about the UN sanctions and unilateral sanctions join up. Like I said, they don't really, at least not right now. But it's also important to note that between the US and Canada, even between different states that are using unilateral sanctions capacities to impose coercive measures in Haiti, there's not been complete overlap in who's been designated. And this has had some practical impacts on the ground. So, in the research that we've been doing, what we see is that one former politician presently in Haiti who was designated, who was sanctioned by Canada, is pointing to the fact that he's only been designated by Canada and not the U.S. effectively as rationale for arguing that the Haitian state should grant him immunity. And so this sort of non-joined up approach has practical impacts that are being leveraged by individuals that have been designated by some countries and has negative impacts on the ground. Now, for the US, why haven't they designated him? That's not completely clear. I think this points to a challenge by the US, and they have to deal with the issue of dual nationals in particular, and how to handle those actors with non-sanctions tools, such as prosecutions. But while this is understandable, the result of this approach on waiting on prosecutions, or in some cases prioritizing the slow development of national designations over UN designations, is shaping a number of negative effects in Haiti. And more than anything else, really what I'd say is that this points to a lack of international strategy on how it is that sanctions can be paired and used either between the UN and member states or between nations involved in autonomous sanctions in order to shape kind of a comprehensive and unitary goal within Haiti. And such a strategy, we'd argue, absolutely needs to be developed.
Yeah, and I think one of the critics that we hear a lot is that sanctions don't work. So could you both elaborate a little bit more on the impact of sanctions on the ground?
Thank you, Anna. Building on your question, and I think it directly connects with Matt's last comment. I think what we have on the ground is an evolution that is definitely linked and tied to the way sanctions have been announced, designed, proposed, and very much in a way like promised as a tool for conflict resolution, for crisis resolution, and a sort of judicial resolution in Haiti. And the fact that you don't have necessarily on the ground let's say the impression that the sanctions are targeting the right person. So I think what happened in Haiti is that you had some evidence of direct impact on the ground in the fall of 2023. The UN panel of experts actually in the very detailed report that they issue cites contacts between Haitians and relevant international personnel that they do perceive a relative impact, most notably in terms of change of behavior, in particular of several political and financial actors. I would say that this quote coming from the panel of experts report has been verified to a certain extent on the ground in the fall of 2023 while we were conducting research in Haiti. What I would say is that deterrent effect, if you wish, of the sanctions, especially on personnel that is supporting, funding, collaborating, doing something, let's say, to keep the gangs alive, that deterrent effect has been slightly and slowly disappearing because the threat that the sanctions were posing on certain actors in the fall has not been followed by actual sanctioning of those people. It was only a kind of seemingly relative threat that you could be sanctions and that you had to change your behavior on the ground. Unfortunately, this deterrent effect has disappeared because nothing happened between the fall and today, especially after the extremely violent crisis that Haiti has witnessed since February 29 and the coordinated attacks by the gangs on the capital. So I would say that the sanctions right now and the image or the impression or the feeling of the Haitian people vis-a-vis the sanctions is that because you have sanctions, 5 gang leaders that are leading the violence right now, the sanctions are not being effective in actually doing anything at reducing violence and reducing the ability for the gangs to operate. Again, I think this is part of the evidence of a net negative impact on the gang themselves, which is extremely limited today. There might be an impact on how gangs are funded, for example, but we have been told that businessmen and other people that actually fund the gangs have been able to adapt, able to change the patronage schemes that allowed them to actually keep on supporting the gangs and actually making sure that they're not like directly under the radar of the sanctions, for example. So again, like coming back to the gang leaders and the fact that only gang leaders and the five like major gang leaders maybe that have been targeted in Haiti and sanctioned are internal actors with a very, very limited need or no need to actually travel abroad, of course, and keep funds abroad as well, while many have extensive international contacts. Apparently, the sanctions have not been limiting this. And again, coming back to the firearms trafficking, I think it shows how much sanctions have not been able, for example, to limit firearms trafficking to Haiti. Haiti is under embargo for firearms trafficking. And even when the country, and especially the capital, was almost under total lockdown during the crisis between March and May, more or less, and when we had like no goods, no food, and no humanitarian aid coming into Haiti, you had firearms and ammunition still coming in the country, which is outrageous to a large extent. And I think this is when sanctions have not been able to have a positive direct impact on the ground. And again, the lack of deterrent effect on behavior from political and economic sponsors to the gang is something that is harming the image and the credibility of the international community to actually provide a direct answer to what is going on the ground in Haiti today.
So I'm gonna disagree a little bit with Romain here. I'm gonna agree with what he said, but I'm gonna slightly disagree with the framing. I think it's really important what we expect and what we mean when we're talking about impact. Generally speaking, there's been kind of a billing of sanctions and other tools as this thing that achieves rapid results, that has a large impact that can lead to behavioral shifts, kind of this broader sense of a big standalone tool. Frankly, I think those who are expecting sanctions to have dramatic impacts on the ground to lead to these big, rapid, visible shifts in behavior in Haiti, and also other areas where sanctions are being used against organized crime actors, they're going to be disappointed. That's not what sanctions do, even in the best of cases. What research by the Global Initiative globally, so looking at cases as dispersed as scam centers in Southeast Asia to sanctions and diamond mining in the Central African Republic, to Guinea-Bissau, to Libya, to the Western Balkans, and in Haiti, as well as other areas, has really underscored that the best way to think about sanctions and what they can do is twofold. One is that they disrupt. They disrupt networks, including both those that have been designated and those that have not been designated. And two, they shape. And as a tool for shaping, this entails efforts to alter the functioning of a criminal ecosystem, influencing cost-benefit assessments made not really by those individuals that are being sanctioned, not by the high-level gang leaders, but a host of other non-designated actors, especially those that might be in lower-level positions or less visible positions, but nonetheless engage in activities that are crucial to gang operations or criminal operations. It's important to note that Haiti's gangs don't operate in a bubble. This is not a self-contained ecosystem. And to really get a sense of that, you just need to look at arms trafficking. Arms are not, generally speaking, being manufactured in Haiti. They're being imported in from the outside. Key financing for gangs is coming from issues such as drug trafficking, which again is being transported into the country as a transshipment point. These create points of vulnerability for some key actors linked to the gangs that can be exploited. what you're not going to be able to do with sanctions is end the gang issue in Haiti overall. What you can start to do is shape some of the harms associated with gangs on the ground and shape the gangs away from engaging in specific key activities that are most destabilizing or most damaging from a human rights perspective. I think likely some of this shaping has already occurred in Haiti, though given the generally limited number of designations to date, it's difficult to really fully pick up on. We have heard a little bit of information around some businesses shunning essentially businessmen and politicians that either are at risk of designation or have been designated. So essentially social shunning or cutting them out of involvement with certain key activities. And that starts to shape the cost benefit analysis. Like, essentially cutting an elite out of a business board seems like a very small price for them to pay for their involvement with gangs. But nonetheless, these small effects add up over time. And thought about strategically and used strategically, you can use that to the advantage of the government of Haiti and to the international community as we attempt to improve the situation for Haitians in the country. Taking small steps and thinking about shaping rather than expecting dramatic action, I think is the right way to think about impact. But of course, that underscores the need to really start to think about strategy in Haiti and how we use strategy around sanctions and other tools.
So Matt, if I could use this last point that you made to make a next question, how you think this strategy could be in Haiti and what is the approach that you feel is needed? I think also relates to a question that was put on the chat on what are the options to make the sanctions smarter to the case of Haiti. So if you could touch upon those.
Sure. I think it's important to note that that there is opportunity for sanctions in Haiti and start for that from the kind of the get-go. While sanctions are generally looked at as a highly sensitive issue in a number of different contexts, what we see in Haiti is that they enjoy broad support by Haitians on the ground. And that's something that absolutely should be leveraged. We see this not just with Global Initiative research, but also with reporting from the UN panel of experts and others. But clearly more is needed. So I think really the first step is for there to be the development of a multinational strategy on addressing Haiti's gangs. Something comprehensive, something that brings together a number of different stakeholders in Haiti, outside of Haiti, from the UN system, but also outside of the UN system, to begin to think this through. It needs to go beyond Haiti's gangs, look at their logistical suppliers, business partners, political and business enablers, et cetera. Now, this can be spearheaded by the UN, but it's likely best spearheaded by regional organizations. So I think CARICOM, for example, could be a logical place to start. Now, this strategy should not be focused on sanctions per se. It should focus on how all cooperating states can use their tools, such as national prosecutorial approaches, aid, data sharing, and sanctions, to be coordinated towards kind of a more cohesive end. I think, this effort could and should bring untraditional players in different states, such as the US, into the fold. So, for example, if we think of a coordinated strategic approach as going beyond sanctions and diplomacy and also involving prosecutions, investigations, and whatnot throughout the Caribbean Basin, in the United States, in Colombia, and other areas that are linked to various aspects of the criminal economy in Haiti, then, for example, the Department of Justice in the US all of a sudden becomes a very crucial player within this strategy. And I think that they can very much be brought in to more directly help with strategic effort, heightening investigations, prosecutions, engaging in mutual legal assistance, both to Haiti and crucially also to its neighbors. So thinking this through in kind of like an ecosystem approach. I think to support the strategy in turn, there needs to be a rethinking and deepening really of how sanctions are employed. And I kind of referred to this earlier. It involves a more comprehensive sanctioning around the totality of a criminal ecosystem. So don't think in terms of gang leaders. Don't think in terms of gangs. Think in terms of the criminal ecosystem that cocoons them and supports them. Lower profile but critical personnel, like I said, should really be key focus here. And to date, this really hasn't been done. There's been no real comprehensive effort to sanction any of the gang's secondary or tertiary leaders, their key economic enablers, or their logisticians, especially those that are involved in the firearms trade. Now, this harkens back to what we've seen around UN sanctions in other conventional conflict zones. They've attempted to focus on key leaders and sanction in a very even-handed way. And that makes sense if you're trying to get two political armed groups to the negotiating table. But I think designating in a politically even-handed way in a situation of criminal conflict is very different. I don't think that it brings the sort of dividends that the UN and others would hope for. Rather, a more comprehensive focus on one gang as a demonstration of two gangs, and really comprehensively going through the lines of key actors affiliated with them, arguably would bring a lot more benefit. I guess this brings in too, within this ecosystem approach, there needs to be thinking of sanctioning actors outside of Haiti's borders who play important supportive roles with the gangs or deepen their business ties with the gangs during the current crisis. So an example here could be drug trafficking organizations, cocaine trafficking organizations. With those organizations sanctioned and prosecuted where possible, explicitly for working with Haitian gang leaders and Haitian gangs, and through them shipping cocaine to Europe. Now, the aim of this approach, again, within a broader strategy, is not just to address a drug trafficking challenge, but is to shape regional criminal actors away from engaging with the Haitian criminal ecosystem, impacting the financing, and in the case of arms trafficking, the armaments of the Haitian gangs. And then finally, I think this is very straightforward, but there needs to be a more nuanced focus on business and political enablers of gang activity within Haiti. I've said this a number of times, but I think it's really important to flag. You know, the panel of experts is detailed in very great depth that many of these enablers wear multiple hats. They engage in complex mixes of business, political activity, and criminality. And this is really complicated actions to sanction them, with some within the international community, for example, viewing any involvement in politics as a sufficient reason to avoid designation. And while this is understandable, this kind of Manichean approach, like this black and white, you know, if you're even 1% political, you're 100% political. That risks really distorting incentives here in Haiti, and also poses a practical problem to addressing some of the key enablers of gangs. At the issue of distorting incentives, it risks leading business actors with connections to the gangs to dabble in politics effectively as a shield against sanctions action. And this is really to the detriment of long-term stability in Haitian politics, and also arguably to the link or to the detriment of efforts to break the link between elites and gangs. So we really argue that a more nuanced approach would involve a more fine-toothed assessment of the degree to which an individual is a political actor and how current and systematically important such political activity is when assessing whether, you know, it's in the interests of long-term strategy to designate them or not. Happy to go on further, but I think that covers some of the basic strategic elements we're looking at.
Yeah, definitely. And we have a couple of questions to go from the chat. So if I can turn to Roman, perhaps, to address a question related to corruption within the police and what would be the difference between the police and the military. So what are your views on the strategic decision to deploy MSS?
Thank you, Anna. I think that the question, of course, is crucial in terms of the national police as an institution in general, and the way the national police is being central to the solution in Haiti. Regarding the army, one has to know that the army in Haiti had been disbanded in 1995 and then restored a couple of years ago. The army is of a small personnel in Haiti. It's been critical over the past couple of months. It's been used especially within the airport and trying to help in securing the airport. But basically, who's in charge of public security in Haiti is the national police. And yes, corruption, and I would say corruption, but also vetting of the national police is of critical interest. It is fundamental today to be able to strengthen the police as an institution to make sure that the institution is able to tackle violence, but also to develop and rebuild as an institution. The police and police officers have been directly targeted by the gangs. They have paid very hard and heavy tribute for the securing of the situation in Haiti. And also you have today a force that is poorly equipped, badly armed, and extremely weak in terms of personnel and people on the ground. So I think the issue of corruption is, of course, crucial on the short term. However, I think it is important to recognize that we have to work with the police, and yes, vetting and addressing corruption will probably come to a second term. But it's crucial today that we focus on the police, and the army will probably be still providing some help, but this is not the core actor that we see on the ground.
Thanks, Ramon. I don't know, Matt, if you want to add to that, but I was wondering whether if you could also tackle two questions that are on the Q&A. One related on how can you better link the MSS and sanctions within Security Council resolutions, and what is the role and effectiveness of sanctions considering the delays on the deployment of the MSS?
Yeah, I think two very different questions. So I'll tackle the first and then get onto the second. So on the first, how could this be better linked together? I mean, I think the initial element here, honestly, might be kind of the catalyzing of discussions and debates within the Security Council on the development of such a strategy, like making more explicit around the opportunity and need of linking these two entities closer together. And this also involves, obviously, kind of a more fine-grained presentation to the Security Council on the art of the possible. But whether we do that now or at the next renewal of the mandate, whether there be a separate resolution that lays this out, or whether there's a wait till autumn, what I would suggest is that there be no waiting. So autumn is a long way away, and I think that while there have been hiccups and delays in the MSS getting on the ground, the longer the time for the panel of experts in the sanctions committee and the MSS to engage and work together and think through their concept of operations or concept of joint operations, the better. There might also be a substantial amount of utility in bringing together actors from other UN missions, again, such as MINUSMA, or missions in CAR or the DRC or other areas that have experience in terms of where the relationship between the panel of experts and the peacekeeping mission on the ground went wrong. Now, this won't map together perfectly because obviously the context within Haiti is very different. Again, the fact that it's economically motivated actors, gang actors, that are the predominant threats to peace and security, I think, sets this very much apart from, for example, what we saw in Mali, what we're currently seeing in the DRC and CAR, what we see in Libya. But nonetheless, I think there are some lessons learned there that are important to get on the table. And so drawing these actors together into a broader workshop, a broader set of lessons learned would be valuable. On the question from Claire, on how important are these if the MSS is delayed? I'd actually go beyond how important are sanctions if the MSS is delayed. I think how important is a comprehensive strategy involving a number of different tools, and that is vitally important. So the MSS arriving in Haiti is not going to be an immediate resolution to the challenges on the ground. It's going to be the beginning of a different phase of the crisis. And that phase arguably is also going to require a similar strategy and similar pairing of many different tools. The groundwork for using those tools, and especially using those tools in a strategic way, really needs to start now. If you start only when the MSS is in the ground, again, you're going to be delayed quite substantially. But crucially, we should also think about the risk that the MSS continues to face further delays in getting on the ground or face delays in getting further staffed up. All of these are quite possible. It's a very difficult context in Haiti, and there might be very real challenges with the force getting in there and beginning to operate effectively. And so in that, other tools that address the criminal ecosystem, prosecutions, aid, information sharing, sanctions, all of this, all could start to squeeze the power of the gangs, squeeze the power of the criminal ecosystem in a way that starts to shape it to such a degree that it's a more conducive environment for the MSS to enter into. Now, none of this is going to be quick. So if the MSS gets on the ground in 2 weeks, likely not much will have shifted. But if we're conceptualizing this as a multi-year effort to bring this gang crisis to an end and to address the rampant instability challenges and as well human rights challenges by the gangs, then such a coordinated strategy starting now and also drawing in these other elements really does start to make sense, because it is going to take years and years and years and years to ultimately address what has been a problem that has been brewing for years.
Thanks, Matt. I think that's very comprehensive. I think there is another question on the chat as well that is looking at the impact of freezing assets and bank accounts locally in Haiti. If you have any views on that, how this could be used to prevent enablers from supporting gangs?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that this is as with many issues around asset freezing and asset forfeiture, this brings up a lot of points that are salient, be it questions around de-risking and the impact on humanitarian activity in Haiti, and not on humanitarian actors, but on the ability of the diaspora in the US and Canada to transfer money to Haiti. And if there's too dramatic a de-risking that occurs by US and Canadian banks vis-a-vis Haiti, I mean, arguably that's not a beneficial outcome either for Haitian citizens or for broader international interests around addressing instability. But that said, I think the new government in Port-au-Prince should take a look at some of the laws that are on the books and identify whether there are avenues where they could buttress some of the legal infrastructure within Haiti to better address the current moment. Part of this might be the freezing of bank accounts that are used by some enablers to engage with gangs. But crucially, the need here would be to draw on experiences, I think, internationally. Again, this is a very difficult issue, and there's no one right answer that will tip the ball towards either stability or instability. But what I'd say is that it should be on the plate and it should be considered. There are potential options there. So this could be another area where, for example, non-traditional players within the Haitian crisis, such as those in Europe, the U.S., Canada, from the Treasury Department, or ministries of finance from some of the international organizations, such as FATF and others, could begin to engage on some good practices that could be advantageous here, but also crucially with an eye towards limiting the impact of any runaway de-risking on, let's say, the crucial diaspora financial support to Haitian citizens on the ground.
Ramon, do you have anything to add on that? It was interesting to hear your views also on the previous question on the importance of sanctions, considering the delays on the MSS.
Thank you, and thank you, Matt. I think you presented fantastic avenues for more research, more analysis, but also much more engagement with like multiple actors. And I think it's what is a bit sometimes missing, even from, again, like a communicating point of view. It's the sanctions are a complex and quite technical tool. And I think it would be part of the effort, our effort, civil society effort, of course, but also state members' efforts, international organizations' effort to actually tell the people a bit more about the importance of the sanctions, how it works, how can things go sometimes slowly, but as Matt was saying, this is a systemic impact that is targeted right now. So I think it's super important to have this in mind. Also, lots of other member states, I would say, have expressed interest in actually having, more, again, like more communication and more information about the sanctions, but also how they can actually join the effort on sanctioning people who are actually working on other topics such as illicit financing, asset freeze, etc. So I think it's part of, again, like coordinating a bit better and taking into account what Matt was presenting. This is a long-term effort that creates, I think, tons of expectations in the general audience. So there is this gap to manage between the long-term impact and the aim of the sanctions to actually have an effect on a systemic level of initiatives, and the fact that the audience and the public actually expect like very direct and short-term impact because the sanctions have been presented a bit as such as I would say. So I think it's part of, again, trying to engage more with the Security Council and state members for sure, but also within the international organizations and civil society to make sure that sanctions are a bit better understood, and actually providing probably some technical cooperation and help in doing that. And I know that there is a lot of demand for that. So I think what you were presenting, Matt, for Haiti and other contexts is extremely important right now.
Thanks, Ramon. I think certainly it's a complex tool to address a complex phenomenon. So lots of information was shared in this webinar for us to take in and reflect upon. We're coming, I think, to the end of this conversation today, but I would like to thank you, Ramon, you, Matt, for all the information shared, for all the participants who enriched this conversation with so many questions. So as I noted in the beginning of this event, this is part of a webinar series conducted by the Global Initiative on Sanctions and Organized Crime. So next Thursday, we will be holding another session to discuss the use of sanctions on Guinea-Bissau. In 2 weeks' time, we will hold an event to discuss the GI framework for assessing the impact of sanctions on transnational organized crime. And in 3 weeks' time, we will be discussing the Global Organized Crime Index as a tool for both developing strategy around sanctions against organized crime. So there's a lot coming up. I suggest that for those who are interested to please keep signing the GI mail list for getting the information on this event. And also for those who attended to the session today, you can go back and access the recording in our website. The link was posted in the chat. It's globalinitiative.net/analysis/sanctions organized crime. So I'm looking forward to see you in the next sessions. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Roman. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.